In this video, we're going to spend 100 days with dragons. There are 3 different species, each having their very own powers: ice, fire, and lightning. On this journey, we will attempt to tame all 3, but to do so, we'll need to get an egg by fighting huge stage 4 and 5 dragons that live in underground lairs. And don't think we'll be safe at the surface, because even if the dragons are smaller, they are incredibly fast and deadly. But I am definitely up for the challenge, so let's set off on this awesome adventure, taming some magnificent creatures, fighting bloodthirsty dragons, and building a huge castle for our very unconventional pets. I spawned at the very bottom of these frosty peaks, and thankfully there were no dragons in sight. So first we're gonna gather up a few logs, and there is some coal here, so I'm going to quickly craft a wooden pickaxe. I was then able to upgrade to stone tools, and as I was continuing to collect wood, I spotted this funny looking bird that was hunting fish. So I accidentally swam by and collected all the fish he had caught. Sorry, Mr. Bird. And I also collected a few more so I wouldn't get hungry. To get a better view of the area, I decided I would head up the mountain. And suddenly, I spotted a huge black dragon behind the trees. Thankfully, it was an alpine dragon, which are neutral mobs, so as long as you don't attack them, it should be fine. It was a really beautiful moment because the sun was setting and all of a sudden, a thunderstorm began. We're gonna name this handsome fellow Hector. Oh, and we almost got hit by lightning, but that's just a minor detail, I guess. I can see there's a few mobs spawning, so we're gonna start a little mine to hopefully get some ores for crafting armor and better tools. So I found a bunch of random new ores. I wasn't really sure what their uses were, but yeah, I was mainly looking for iron, and yes, for some reason this shader makes some of the ores glow, which is a bit weird, but never mind. On day 1 I headed back up to the surface and said hello to Hector. In the distance I spotted some sheep, so after crafting a shield, I went to collect some wool from them so that I could craft myself a bed. So basically, you can tame alpine dragons by giving them a pollinated bee to eat, so off I went in the search of a bee nest. I came across a broken portal, so I looted it, and I noticed a funny little creature that was staring up at me. It was called a root stalker, so I greeted the little guy, but the problem was I didn't have any eggs for taming it, so I said farewell and continued on my way. I soon entered an oak forest, and in the corner of my eye, I spotted a bee's nest. I was looking around for some flowers, and I met this raccoon and also a friendly deer. Finally, the weather cleared and out popped a bee, so I showed her some flowers and we started our way back to the alpine dragon. If that poor bee knew where we were going, I think she would run in the other direction instantly. Well, I guess she would fly rather than run, but oh well, let's not worry about the specifics. The night quickly fell upon the forest, so I made us a home to spend the night. I let Mrs. B buzz around, and I started mining down to hopefully find some iron. Luckily, I came upon this cave with a fair few iron veins, so I mined them all, smelted them, and crafted some armor, which would definitely be useless against dragons, but it's a good start nonetheless. On day 2, Mrs. B and I headed back through the woods to find Hector. Finally, we spotted the elegant alpine patiently waiting for us. So, yeah, it was time for Mrs. B to meet her tragic fate. And, how shall I put it? Mrs. B lost her life for absolutely nothing because I was supposed to feed her to Hector on a lead. Talk about learning things the hard way. I said farewell to Hector because I knew getting slime early game would be really tricky, but promise we'll come back for him soon enough. Off went Tootsie, the knight in shining armor, to continue her adventure. I collected some leather from these cows, and then I saw these beautiful orcas swimming by the shoreline. So of course, little Tootsie had to go greet them. There's a shipwreck over there, so let's see if we can get some decent loot from it. Oh, and this looks like a mix between a swamp and a spruce forest, so hopefully some slime spawn in it. Okay, let's see if we can get some good loot. Well, nothing incredible, but honestly, early game anything is useful. Right behind the boat, there were 2 silver gliders resting on the beach, so we'll definitely try to tame them tomorrow. That night I collected some extra iron and I crafted a bed because I couldn't wait to get back to the gliders. So yeah, today let's have a go at taming these creatures. So first we need to get some fish. Oh great, while I was catching the fish, the gliders flew off. Okay, perfect, there's actually one in the tree. And now began the long chase of the silver glider, which is much harder than chasing cats because, well, gliders can fly. Yeah, at that point I realized I was not going to get the gliders, so it was time to focus on our first mission, getting some slime for making leads. I saw this adorable unicorn dad with his kids, and then I made my way across the ocean while I waited for the night to fall. Suddenly, terror struck. A siren had seen me and I was lured uncontrollably by her singing. There was nothing I could do except fight for my life. Yeah, honestly, what a great and relaxing start to our adventure. First thing I did after that was to of course craft some earplugs so that this awful situation wouldn't happen again. I spotted a biome that looked like a vanilla swamp. I killed off this slime that was jumping about in the water and I finally managed to get some slime balls. On day 4 it was finally time to get back to Hector, so of course I put on my earplugs to cross the ocean safely. Take that, mermaid. I spotted the unicorn family again, I got some leather, and I made it back to the snowy mountains. Just above me, I saw the glider flying again, but I gave up on taming it because he was flying way too high. On the other hand, I could tame a root stalker if I had some eggs, so I decided I would bring this little flock of chickens along with me. And the chickens were not the only ones to follow because these 3 raccoons started begging for food and it looked pretty hilarious. Oh yeah, and I made this bridge for the chickens, but they all decided to go straight in the water, so yeah, very useful Tootsie. I made a little enclosure for the chickens and I said goodnight to Hector. I killed off a couple of spiders and I was finally able to craft some leads for taming Hector. Finally, on day 5, it was time to properly tame the handsome alpine dragon. I went back to the nest and I attached this pollinated bee to one of my leads. We carefully made our way back and the poor little bee met her sad fate. I'm really sorry to all the bees. This is quite bad. But finally we had befriended Hector. I mean, wow, I am loving this dragon world already. Just soaring through the skies like this is simply marvelous. And it seems Hector has a way of making moments truly magical because it suddenly started snowing. Talk of a dramatic moment. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, I absolutely adored this adventure. I mean, being able to interact with these majestic creatures was so much fun. Now, let's get back into it. So I sat Hector down and he gave one of his big roars and I went to collect some eggs from the chickens to hopefully tame a root stalker. I managed to tame him with my very first egg and named him Max. I also tamed a second root stalker and named her Emma. What's cool with the root stalkers is that you can lift them up and carry them on your head and shoulders, which is, let's be honest, very cute. And on top of that, I can continue carrying them while being on Hector's back. So yeah, the Tootsie family will be able to travel all together. And that's when I saw the silver glider again. Yeah, this time guys, we are taming the glider, even if it takes me 10 days to do so. I decided to slowly creep up on the glider at night because she was sleeping. I tried giving her fish several times, but she kept flying further off to find another place to sleep. I soon realized I couldn't actually force feed the fish. She had to come to me herself and accept being fed. I'd been following her for quite some time now and I was starting to lose hope. But suddenly she flew back towards me and ate the cod. Now, something quite fun with the silver glider is that you can carry them on your head and simply glide down a hill, a bit like when using an elytra. I picked up Max and Emma and climbed onto Hector's back. And then out of nowhere, a creeper exploded and removed a great deal of hearts from Hector and I, which to be fair wasn't a very nice moment. I saw that you could craft a special item with ender pearls in which I could catch animals and transport them safely. And for that, I needed ender pearls, so I decided to hunt down a few endermen. On day 7, it was time for us to find our forever home. My goal was to find a place that was cute and cozy, but above all, safe from dragons. We suddenly reached a really interesting area, which was basically the intersection between woodlands and a type of bushy plains biome, which thankfully wasn't the kind that has fire dragons in it. My ultimate plan in this world is building a huge medieval castle because I think it'll fit really well with the dragon theme. But we'll be focusing on taming some dragons first, so in the meantime we'll be building a much less impressive house using cobblestone and dark oak. I started digging up a new mine and I crafted a bow to be better protected from enemies, and mainly my only chance to kill a dragon early game is through long-range combat. Another important factor for my survival would be getting some diamond armor, so I headed down to mine at diamond level. I was able to find my first diamond vein underneath some other ores. Keep in mind, diamond armor is really ineffective against dragons, but we can't make dragon scale armor before killing one, so it's the best chance we've got. I crafted myself a diamond pickaxe to be able to collect obsidian so that we can enter the nether as soon as possible. And I also found an extra diamond. On day 8, I continued working on our starter house, which actually looked more like a shack, but oh well, starter houses are supposed to look like that. It's already a big step not to be using dirt. I was mainly building it for the Tootsie family because I felt more at ease knowing that all my companions had a roof over their heads. That night, I built the nether portal and lit it up. I quickly went back up to mob-proof the hut by adding a door and some fences so that I could see my surroundings and let a bit of daylight in as well. I then popped into the nether and to my great delight, we spawned inside a nether fortress. This is really perfect because my main purpose in entering the nether so early is to get blaze rods and magma cream for brewing fire resistance potions. On day 9, Hector and I headed back to the old mine to collect all the stuff I was unable to bring the first time. Back home, I crafted an ender eye, and by combining it with some blue geodes, I got a dragon soul crystal. All I had to do was click on one of my creatures and they would be caught in the shiny blue ball. My plan was, if I spot a dragon coming to attack us, I will immediately catch everyone in these crystals so that I can keep them safe. Here is the Tootsie family shack complete, and on the sides I'm going to place down some fences to start breeding animals. The only problem is, I didn't find any chickens nor cows in the area, so that's gonna be an issue. During the night, I went back down to strip mine for diamonds, and then on day 10, I built a second enclosure on the other side of the house. I really needed to find cows for getting leather and chickens for feathers, so I started exploring the biome in the hopes that I would find some. I came across some bees, a raccoon family, and even a waystone, but no cows or chickens in sight. I decided to bring back this sheep in case I needed any wool, and that's when I realized there are a few small deers in the area, and after doing the Tootsie test, I discovered that they dropped leather. So yeah, I guess we'll be breeding deers instead of cows. It's quite handy because you can breed them with wheat exactly like you would for regular cows, which is perfect. I started adding a cobblestone slab roof over the deer pen, and then I crafted myself a diamond chestplate before heading back into the nether. And now it's time to get a bunch of blaze rods. Oh, and guess what? I got a wither skull from killing my very first wither. I continued my journey through the fortress in the search of nether warts, which are an essential ingredient in potion making. Once I'd collected plenty, I headed back to the overworld to craft a brewing stand. I went to get some sand to make glass, fed the deer, and then I jumped onto Hector's back and flew off. We spotted this really cool hippogriff just enjoying life, and then we stumbled upon a small flock of chickens that I decided to bring back to fill in the second animal pen. Hector was following us, and when he flew off, it sent all the chickens flying in every direction, which was quite funny. After that, I made sure Hector wasn't jumping around because I was afraid he would accidentally kill the chickens with his air blast. We finally made it back to the house and Hector wanted to live with the chickens, but he was slightly too big. I fed the flock and then I returned to the Nether to get some magma cream for making fire resistance potions. I crafted some bottles, filled them up with water, and started brewing some potions. On day 12, I went to strip mine to hopefully get a few more diamonds, but I only found one, which was a bit underwhelming. I bred the deer and fed the chickens, and I made a roof over their enclosure to protect them from the rain. I hadn't slept for a few nights, so some phantoms spawned, and I got a bit of phantom membrane, and then I finished off the night with some strip mining. The next day, I fed all the animals, and then I made a small farming area next to the river to grow some wheat. I decided to take the Tootsie family out to explore the dark oak forest. We noticed some sparkling dust in the distance, and when I approached, I discovered they were pixies. They basically put little spells on you and giggle in your ear, so I expect they are quite mischievous creatures. I harvested a bit of sugarcane, and when we returned home, I killed off some deer to start collecting some leather. We saw some Stymphalian birds in the nearby swamps, so we returned back immediately because they are quite hostile and throw sharp metallic arrows on their prey. On day 14, I realized Max and Emma were missing, so we quickly headed back towards the swamp. Thankfully, I found the two little creatures relaxing in the grass. I lifted them up onto my back, and then Hector brought us all home. I planted the sugarcane I'd got and flew back once again towards the swamp, but this time I wanted to continue exploring the world further. We found another dark forest with a plains biome right behind. In the horizon was a deadly beast going back and forth in his nest. It was a black stage 3 dragon, and he had the power to easily kill me if I wasn't careful. I hunted a few cows but quickly realized the dragon was starting to fly and spit out flames on nearby animals, so yeah, I think it's time for us to get out of here and continue preparing ourselves for our first fight. That night I went mining and I came across this cave, so I looked around for diamonds, but once again, no luck here. By day 15, it was clear I needed to find more sugarcane if I wanted to craft 15 bookshelves for enchanting. So I hopped onto Hector's back and we set off on the Get Sugarcane mission. So basically, when I spotted some sugarcane, we would quickly fly down and harvest it. And we also did the same when we found some deer because bookshelves also require a lot of leather. In the distance, we saw a beached butterfly leviathan, but I didn't get too close because they are quite deadly as well. We then continued harvesting plenty of sugarcane until we reached another plains biome with a majestic red dragon flying in the mist. So I very smartly decided to get leather from these cows. And of course, the red dragon stormed down on me with his fire attack. Oh, and should I point out there were actually 2 dragons. So yeah, well, that was it, guys. There is nothing I could do except fly as far as possible to try and save Hector, and I died. Yeah, honestly, I felt great dying on day 16 and possibly losing my greatest friend in this adventure was absolutely splendid. On top of that, I didn't spawn back home, but rather in the same spot as day 0, so I had no food or items. My only objective now was saving Hector. Even if I died again, I didn't care. I made a boat and started sailing across the ocean. Hector had lost a lot of health with the dragon attacks, so I was scared it was already too late. Out of nowhere, he teleported to me in flames, so I jumped in the river, hoping he would follow me to ease his suffering. And finally, the fire was put out. And wow, Hector had 1.5 hearts left. I sat him down to let him heal, and I decided to attempt to get some of my stuff back. I was so hungry I couldn't sprint or swim, so I hunted a few fish and ate them raw to lose as little time as possible. I then swam around in circles to collect all my stuff, and thankfully the dragons had probably flown back to their nests, so I wasn't killed a second time. I then returned to Hector, who had managed to heal pretty quickly and had more than half his hearts back. We then flew home, and wow, I was so happy to see our little hut again and still have Hector by my side. I crafted a campfire and placed it under a bee nest to be able to collect some honey to give to Hector for him to heal better. I then bred the animals and planted all the sugarcane I'd gathered. I also bone mealed some of the wheat and gave the seeds to the chickens. As we're doing a bit of mining here, let's have a little fact. 6 of the world's deepest mines are located in South Africa. The one topping the list is the Mponeng gold mine, sorry if I didn't pronounce it well, which is almost 4 kilometers deep or 2.4 miles. This time around I did find a diamond vein, so I collected some extra obsidian and sugarcane to be able to craft an enchanting table. I started making a little enchanting area behind the hut and crafted a bunch of books, though I was still missing quite a few. I mined all through the night until day 19, and at one point I saw this spawner, so I thought, great, I'll be able to make a cave spider XP farm. But no, it was actually a modded one that would spawn a group of monsters, so yeah, I couldn't bother dealing with it and ran off. I came by some more diamonds and I finally was able to craft a full set of diamond armor. I fed the deer and harvested some extra wheat for them. That evening I crafted a pixie jar and I set out the next morning to try and catch one. Hector and I went back to the pixie village and I caught this little yellow pixie. Honestly, I had no clue what to do with a pixie in a jar, but oh well. I then remembered I'd seen some sugarcane at the spawn point, so we headed over to get it. I realized maybe I could get leather from hunting moose, so I gave it a try, but they don't drop anything, so this was quite pointless. Further off, we found some cows in the mountains, so I collected some leather and I also chopped down a few dark oak trees for crafting. The sugarcane had grown quite well, so I was able to make 8 bookshelves. Okay, no clue what's going on here. There's just a bunch of skeletons attacking each other for no reason. I placed down the pixie jar, fed the chickens, and crafted an extra bookshelf before going off to bed. On day 21, I wanted to finish crafting all the bookshelves, so we found some llamas, a few deer, and we also stopped by these cows to get some milk for making a cake, and I left one alive because I would be needing milk for fighting ice dragons later on. The next day I went over to the pixie village with some cake to try and tame one. This yellow pixie accepted the cake and I was able to interact with her, to sit her down and follow me. Back home, I decided to sit her down on the bed, which was actually pretty funny to look at. And then I placed down the bookshelves around the table and harvested some more crops. I was starting to get quite a few deer, so it was the perfect moment to get the remaining leather I needed from them. I collected the sugarcane that had grown and crafted the last few bookshelves I needed for enchanting. I started looking through the enchantments to see if there were any good ones, and I refreshed the table with low enchants. I also crafted a grindstone so that I would be able to get a few levels back and continued refreshing the table. Finally, I got protection 4 for the chest plate, so it was time to get more levels. I thought it was a good idea to take silver with me in the nether so that I could glide down if needed. I started mining quartz, and as soon as I let her fly off, she flew into some flames and started taking damage, so I quickly sat her down. And then a ghast was sending fireballs at us, so yeah. The nether is clearly not somewhere I should be taking pets. I gave poor Silver some cod to heal her, and I left her in this safe area while I went to mine quartz for levels. Just to be safe, I took the wise decision to pick Silver back up and bring her back to the safety of the Tootsie family shack. I then headed back in the nether and continued mining. By day 24, I had 30 levels, so I enchanted my diamond chestplate with protection 4, and then I went back to mining quartz for a bit and managed to get infinity from my bow. I hatched a few rotten eggs the chickens had laid, and I got 2 baby cockatrices, which are chicken-like creatures that help protect your base, although if you meet them in the wild, they would just try to kill you. To keep them safe until they grew up, I sat them down in the house and named them Kate and William. I returned to the nether for another quartz mining expedition, And when I went back to the overworld, I decided to craft tools out of red geodes I'd found, as well as a dragon staff that I could use to enter my creatures' inventories to see their health, but also to be able to rename them. So yeah, I was able to properly name Hector, Silver, Max, and Emma, just as if I'd used name tags on them. That night, I went out to fight a few mobs for levels, and then on day 26, I crafted a second bow because I only had infinity on the other one, and I definitely needed power 4 for fighting the fire dragon. I went to get a bucket of milk with Hector in case I wanted to tame another pixie. I then went back into the nether and got more levels. I crafted a red geode axe and shovel and enchanted my second bow with power 4, and guess what? It came with infinity as well. As I now had a fairly decent bow and full diamond armor, the dragon fight was close. We set off in the direction of the plains biome to finally fight the fire dragon. As promised, I kept Hector safe by hiding him in the dark oak forest. As the dragon was far away, I had time to make up a strategy. Basically, I'm going to dig some holes in the ground, gradually approaching the dragon nest, so that I can quickly run inside and shoot arrows when the dragon comes to attack. I also drank some fire resistance potions just in case and continued digging some holes. When I finally made it to the nest, guess what? The dragon wasn't even here, so I looted the chest with absolutely no difficulty. On day 28, I spotted the dragon attacking some fish in the river, and I started shooting arrows to try and attract his attention. I thought I'd managed to do so I ran into my hole, and when I crept out, I realized he had been distracted by some animals. So I shot towards him again until finally he came to attack me. Now, one thing I hadn't really planned was the fact the dragon was continuously breathing flames onto the entrance of the hole, so I had no clue where to aim. Finally, the fire stopped, so I was able to shoot 2 arrows, and then it all started again. I got a few more arrows in when all of a sudden, the dragon removed all the dirt around me, and I was left fully exposed. So I desperately looked for the opening of my hole, which had been submerged in water, and I quickly swam down. When I surfaced again, I realized that the dragon flew off out of sight. I waited for the night to come to start my search because I knew the dragon would be sleeping. As this is a very important moment, I removed the shader to have the best visibility possible. So I found the remains of this poor sheep and some charred dirt, and right behind the hill, the dragon lay fast asleep. I carefully approached, and just as I was about to put the chain on, the dragon woke up. So yeah, we've got Shaky Tootsie desperately trying to attach the dragon to a wall and running for her life. I drank a fire resistance potion because the dragon could breathe fire on me from super far, and as I arrived back at my hole, I had to kill a crocodile that had been waiting for me. I decided to sleep through the night so that I could go back to fight the dragon without loads of mobs bothering me. On day 29, I set back out, and the dragon spotted me straight away, so I had to hide behind this hill, but we ended up having the exact same situation as earlier, where I can't see a thing while shooting because of all the flames. So I decided to try and shoot it from a distance, but he would always end up seeing me, which was crazy. Even when I was completely hidden in the dark oak forest, I could see flames coming towards me, so I found Hector and flew home because we were gonna need to make more fire resistance potions as this fight is going to take way longer than I had originally planned. On day 30, we set back out again to find the dragon. I sat Hector down and started piling up with cobblestone to be able to see the dragon in the horizon. I then slowly started to make a bridge in its direction. As I was getting closer, I drank my potion, and soon after, the dragon started attacking me again. I quickly ran back from where I came and started shooting arrows. At one point, the dragon calmed down, so I got a few arrows in him, but soon enough he saw me again, so the fight lasted until the next day. The dragon had had time to calm down during the night, so I was able to approach him, and as he had already lost a lot of hearts, I finally managed to kill him. Well, that was trickier than I thought it would be, but It's time to reap the fruits of this battle, so I collected some dragon scales, meat, and bones. That night, I victoriously returned to Hector and we flew home. Back at the shack, I went to get some honey, and the bees weren't too happy about that, though this person right here was delighted. Using the grey dragon scales I got, I was able to craft a chestplate, some leggings, and a helmet, as well as the very powerful dragon bone bow. I refreshed the enchanting table quite a few times and finally got infinity. So here is what the dragon scale armor looks like, and honestly, it looks pretty cool. I went to see the chickens and I got 2 more cockatrices, so I sat them down with the Tootsie family. I went through the portal and started getting more levels. I was making my way back up to the fortress when I stepped in the wrong place and had a very agreeable lava bath. That night, I enchanted my dragon bow with infinity, and I also got power 4 and unbreaking 3 on it as well. On day 33, I crafted some dragon bone arrows, and I also brewed some more potions because we'll be trying to fight a stage 4 or 5 dragon in the hopes of getting our very first dragon egg. So as I mentioned in the intro, these enormous dragons live in large underground lairs, so the only way to find one is by mining down in different spots until we bump into one. As I had already started mining little holes for fighting the black dragon, I decided I would start with these and mine until I reached bedrock. Yeah, I just remembered the pixie I tamed gave a haste effect, so we're gonna go back to get her, and to name her, I originally wanted to do something cute like Buttercup, but as we're in autumn, why not call her Pumpkin? So we left Hector at the entrance of the Dark Oak Forest, and then Pumpkin followed me down to the second hole I'd made. We didn't get any luck in that one either, so we tried again near the dragon nest, and all of a sudden I noticed some charred blocks, so I mined a bit further. And indeed, we had found our first dragon lair. There was an enormous dragon sleeping, surrounded by chests, gold, and ores. This was both really exciting and terribly scary at the same time. The dragon had slightly curvy horns and no spots on its wings, meaning it was a female and we could get an egg from her. So I knew it wouldn't be wise to just randomly jump into battle because I would simply get destroyed, so I decided I would make this super long tunnel I could run into for safety because the dragon can break blocks, and I actually ran into a second dragon lair, but yeah. We're not going to fight 2 dragons at once. The tunnel was prepared, now it was time to attack. I mined until I reached the dragon and fell into a hole. Tootsie always handling things very smoothly. When I finally made it out of my hole, I had to try and attach the dragon with a chain. I somehow managed to do so, and then I made a quick run for it and decided to shoot arrows from a distance because there was this huge cave opening right next to the lair. Not gonna lie, with all that fire I could barely see anything. So I went to get some health back and shot at the dragon again as there were less flames around. One issue with this cave opening was that the mobs came to bother me, but nothing I couldn't handle. When I came back up, I couldn't see the dragon anymore, so I carefully made my way through the tunnel and shot at her again. When I returned to my post, I continued shooting arrows, but I didn't see any sign of the dragon, so I returned once again to the lair to discover she was already dead. I started looting her and I heard a Minecrafter's favorite sound. Yeah, I did not want to risk losing this important loot to a creeper explosion. I also quickly opened some of the chests and I was delighted to see I had got a lovely emerald egg. Sadly, Pumpkin seemed to have died during the dragon fight, so I returned alone to Hector and we flew back home. Yeah, I just realized my armor really matches Hector's black feathers, which is quite nice. For a fire dragon egg to hatch, it has to be put in flames, so I put a block of netherrack underneath and lit it up. I made a little wall around it out of cobblestone, and then I crafted a full set of dragon scale armor using the bronze scales I'd collected. I also discovered you could make regular tools out of dragon bones, so I upgraded all my tools because they were actually stronger than diamond and red geodes. Using a skull and some sticks, I made a dragon staff, and then I went enchanting as I'd gotten a fair few levels. So I got Fortune 3 for the pickaxe and Looting 3 on the sword. That night I thought it would be fun to go mob hunting with Max and Emma, but they couldn't fit through the door, so I went alone. I started off day 37 with a bit of farming, and then I crafted the bestiary with the manuscript pages I'd found in the chest. There wasn't much to read in it, so I realized you actually have to craft a bestiary lectern and collect more manuscripts to be able to add pages with information on the mythical creatures. I got another cockatrice from a rotten egg, and that's when I remembered I needed to check on the dragon egg. The egg had hatched, and there was no dragon in sight because I'd left an opening at the entrance of my useless cobblestone wall. And now began the search of a tiny bright green dragon in a huge bright green biome with tons of bushes and grass. Yeah, that's what we call a needle in a haystack. The weird thing was, I could hear the baby dragon, but I couldn't see it, and even the subtitles didn't show a direction for the sound. On day 38, I proceeded to remove all the bushes from the area in an attempt to reveal the baby dragon if he was hiding underneath. Talk about a day well spent. Guess where the little guy was hiding? In the crop field. The little guy was actually a little girl, so I picked her up on my shoulder and let me introduce the new member of the Tootsie family. Catherine. I mean, she is so adorable, guys. Look at that. I brought her inside the house and I used the dragon staff to tell her to stay. Now, it takes 125 days for a dragon to fully grow, so seeing as we're already on day 38, this may be an issue, but I can craft dragon meal using 5 bones and 4 pieces of meat, which adds an extra day to the baby dragon, so it's time to farm loads of chickens and hunt skeletons. The next morning, I was able to craft 8 dragon meals, so I fed Catherine and she grew a bit larger. And yes, don't mind the arrows in my bottom, it's the sacrifice I'm willing to make for her. With the dragon staff, I could command Catherine to escort me, to wander, and stay. Now, if you don't already think I'm a complete idiot, you will now. I decided to take some dragon meat to heal myself while hunting mobs. And when I ate it, I caught fire and I immediately thought I was getting attacked. Honestly, rewatching this back, I'm so ashamed I didn't figure it out instantly. Like, wow, look at my confusion the entire night. Okay, finally, on day 40, my neurons connected and I figured out it had been the fire dragon meat all along. Well done, Tootsie. It only took you enough time to look absolutely ridiculous in front of everyone. As Pumpkin wasn't with us anymore, I decided to try and tame another pixie. I was throwing my cake around the place, but it seemed none of the pixies were interested for some reason. That's when I saw there was a woodland mansion nearby, but I was more focused on getting a pixie, so I threw my cake again and this pixie just stole my bones, so I had to quickly hit her to get them back because I really needed those bones for Catherine. I noticed this green pixie was staying nearby and giving me luck, so I guess she had accepted my cake. But then Hector accidentally killed her with his gust of air, so yeah, that was a bit of a fail. We returned home and I collected chicken meat for making dragon meal, and Catherine was able to grow 10 extra days. She then fell asleep, which meant it was now time for some more skeleton hunting. On day 41, I fed all the animals and gave Catherine some more dragon meal. I thought that I could maybe alternate between skeletons and wither skeletons for getting bones, so I went over to the fortress to start my hunt. On day 42, I farmed more chickens and fed Catherine. Yes, I'm gonna be doing a lot of that for the next few days. She was starting to look like a proper teenage dragon, so I let her fly around a bit, and she was really quite majestic. I had a look at her for a while because she was so pretty, and then I crafted a new item. the dragon flute. I wasn't sure how to use it, so I tested it randomly on Catherine until I figured out it was actually to summon her to the ground while she was flying in the air. Yeah, honestly guys, I love having a pet dragon, and I cannot wait for her to be old enough for us to fly around together. That afternoon, I decided to head back to the dragon lair with Hector, and guess who I found? Pumpkin the pixie. I started looting some chests with Pumpkin by my side when a creeper exploded and killed Pumpkin. Yeah, the emotional roller coaster was real. I made my way around the lair, looting chests and killing nearby mobs, and I managed to get some more manuscripts to add pages to the bestiary. I came across this really big tortoise with blue oars sticking out of its back. The poor creature got hit by a skeleton that was aiming at me, so I took care of him in return. I clicked on the tortoise and off popped some lapis. I also saw that you can feed her cave roots, but I guess this is more for breeding, so with no other tortoises in sight, I said farewell and went back up to Hector. Back home, I added some pages to the bestiary by using some manuscripts. I was able to learn more information on tame dragons, dragon materials, and the different species. I fed and farmed the chickens for crafting dragon meal for my big girl, and guess what? Finally, I was able to climb onto her back. I of course had to test her fire attack and above all, the flying. And there is no better way to describe this than simply epic. That night, I saw you can make armor for your dragons, so I crafted some for her head and neck out of iron. I also put protection 4 on my leggings and efficiency 4 on the axe. On day 44, I entered Catherine's inventory to put her armor on, and she looked really badass with it. I crafted a dragon horn, which was an item I saw in the bestiary. Basically, it allows you to pick up dragons and carry them around in your inventory. We went on a Catherine and Tootsie adventure and found a village right next to the spruce forest. We had just entered the biome when we spotted an ice dragon nest hidden in the trees with a hungry dragon wandering around. So yeah, the next dragon on our list is the ice dragon. We went back home to make all the preparations for the fight. I farmed some deer for extra food and read a few dedicated pages in the bestiary. Apparently, regeneration potions are recommended for fights, so I entered the nether to kill some ghasts. On day 45, I went back to the overworld, collected some sand, and crafted bottles for brewing potions. I gave some dragon meal to Catherine, and then placed the ghast tears in the brewing stand. I also wanted to make weakness potions, so Catherine and I flew over to the dark oak forest to collect some brown mushrooms. I also used spider eyes for making a few poison potions, and I added gunpowder to all of these potions so that I could throw them at the dragon if needed. On day 46, I got protection 4 for my helmet, and then we set off to find the cow I had spared, and she had actually just drifted down into a cave, so I collected some milk from her and we returned to the base. The night came, so it was time to go attack the ice dragon. The dragon I had seen wasn't sleeping, so we looked a bit further and found another ice dragon nest, but this time it was asleep. I know I should have attacked with Catherine, but I was so scared I might lose her like what happened to Hector, so I decided to go alone. I got attacked by a witch, so I had slowness on me, which was a bit annoying, and then I slowly approached the nest. But the dragon had woken up and was shooting ice at me, which made it impossible to move. I quickly drank some milk to be able to sprint again, but that removed the regeneration effect, and the dragon instantly caught up with me and froze me again. Panic struck because the dragon was completely destroying me, so as soon as I got loose, I quickly got Catherine to escort me. I drank another regeneration potion and started shooting some arrows at the ice dragon. It was getting closer and closer when finally I killed it. Oh, and guess what? As soon as the dragon was dead, Catherine finally decided to help. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're a bit late, young lady. The next day, we went over to the village to attack the second dragon. I decided to use the dragon flute, even though I had no clue if it worked on wild dragons, and the dragon ended up in the river. Then continued the weirdest dragon fight ever. The dragon was just swimming around while I was hitting it. I mean, I am fighting with an ice dragon or a sea monster. Finally, the dragon was no more and I looted some scales and bones. Now we have a little issue. Catherine has disappeared. I tried calling her several times with the flute, and then I climbed up that hill in case I could spot her in the distance, but no sign of that silly girl. I resolved to making it back home on foot and then coming back with Hector. We looked all over the spruce forest and where I had attacked the dragons, but it's only when we entered the mountain biome that she suddenly reappeared again. I had put her on escorting you and not wandering, so I was really confused about how I was able to lose her in the first place. So yeah, the three of us returned home, and wow, I think this is my favorite scene of the entire video. Catherine and Hector flying together in the sunset. Back home, I actually noticed Hector seemed to have a little crush on Catherine, which was really cute. I really loved the ice dragon scales, so I decided to make a chestplate and some boots out of them because I still didn't have any enchantments on them yet. Oh yeah, and look how smooth I am when showing off my armor. Well done, Toots. I picked up Catherine in the horn, enchanted my chestplate with protection 4, and hopped onto Hector's back to set off on our next mission, getting an ice dragon egg. So first I wanted Catherine to have a bit more armor on, so we went to the first dragon nest to loot the chests and the silver, and then we also went to the second one that had way more silver, so I mined it all and I made some armor for Catherine. I felt better knowing she had a full set of armor, so she'll be much more protected from now on. I went back to the nests and started mining down towards bedrock. The reason I did so was the fact we had found 2 fire dragon lairs near the stage 3 dragon nest, so there was a chance of finding lairs if I dig down underneath them. I didn't get any luck with the first one, so I went over to the second nest, and that's when I came across some frozen blocks underground that were surrounding a large blue ice dragon. Okay, I need to tell you this now, guys. This is actually a male dragon, meaning I can't get an egg from it. But I didn't notice it at the time of the recording, so watch me risk my life fighting a stage 4 dragon for nothing. Shall I point out, I didn't manage to chain the dragon up because he kept breaking the walls I placed down, so this was going to be a very stressful battle. When I finally managed to kill the ice dragon, I went up to loot it and looked everywhere for the egg in a panic, only to realize that all my efforts and risks had been in vain. I went back up to the surface to pick up Catherine and Hector, and I went home not victoriously this time, feeling quite silly not to have noticed the spots on the dragon's wings. I made some more dragon meal for my big girl, and then we both went over to a spruce forest I'd spotted earlier on while collecting leather and sugarcane. When we saw another ice dragon, I quickly told Catherine to escort me, but immediately the dragon attacked us and poor Catherine had turned into a huge ice cube. I was scared she was taking damage, so I climbed onto her back and we flew off. I used Catherine's fire attack to start burning our foe, but then the dragon came at us, so I decided to jump off Catherine's back to shoot arrows, and she fought the dragon very hard as well. Our mutual efforts were successful, and when I tried healing her, I realized she still had full health, meaning her armor was very effective. I looted the dragon materials and fed my brave companion before going to bed. On day 58, we went to the nest, looted the chest, and started digging down to bedrock. We actually did find a lair, but I immediately checked the wings, and it was sadly a male. I went back up to Catherine and we continued exploring the taiga. We saw another ice dragon, so we immediately went to attack. This dragon was quite a feisty beast because he chased us in the air and was fairly difficult to hit. At one point, it flew back down to the ground, so Catherine used her fire attack, and finally the dragon was no more. Yeah, don't ask me why we have a shaky dragon. Let's pretend it was cold or it likes breakdancing. Next, let's go check out the nest. I dug down underneath and arrived in a ravine with the outside crust of a dragon lair sticking out. I had a look inside and once again we had a male. The next day I continued exploring the cave a bit and I thought I had come across another part of the lair, but it was actually a completely different one and there lay a female. And now it's time for the attack. At one point, it was so terrifying because she broke every single block underneath me and I have no clue how I even managed not to fall. I ran back to the ravine and I made a little hole to hide in. I shot a bunch of arrows up at her and suddenly I realized she was on fire, meaning Catherine was helping me attack her from the surface as well. I was starting to get some damage, so I went to heal in my hole and my awesome Catherine finished her off for me. I was really so happy because this fight had been terribly scary, so I was glad Catherine had my back here. I went up to loot the body, and yes, this time I did get a nice dragon egg. So we flew home victoriously this time around, and I was so excited because we'll soon have a tiny ice baby. I placed the egg in water and surrounded it with dirt blocks to avoid losing the baby a second time. With the levels I got from the fight, I enchanted my boots with protection 4. I also got unbreaking for my shovel alongside efficiency 4, which would be handy for terraforming the base of my castle. So yeah, we have a full enchanted armor and tools, and the awesome Tootsie family is continuously growing. So it's high time to build ourselves a proper home. To start off, let's smelt up some cobblestone to craft a stone cutter for making bricks. That evening, I went out to check on the egg, and believe it or not, the baby had disappeared again. Thankfully, the baby had fallen asleep, so he didn't wander very far, and I gave our new family member some dragon meal and named her Spike. I presented little Spike to Catherine, who promised she would look out for her little sister. Yeah, having all these dragons around me gives such a nice atmosphere. Okay. It's time to start building our castle. I started by making the outline of the first entrance tower. I then terraformed the front a bit and made the outline of the second tower. That night I realized I needed to hunt a bunch more skeletons to make the baby dragon grow quicker. On day 56 I farmed more chickens to craft dragon meal and I fed little Spike. I also gave a bit of chicken to big sister Catherine and continued building the entrance. I got all the cockatrices out of the way and also looked at the outline from higher up to make sure it was all symmetrical. I then made a wall going from the front to the back of the castle and traced the outline of the back tower. That night I hunted a few skeletons and then headed to the nether to kill wither skeletons to change it up a bit. On day 57 I continued terraforming the area and completed the outline, so yeah, we're gonna have a fairly large castle. I started building up the towers and realized it would be good to have a silk touch pickaxe instead of constantly smelting stacks of cobblestone, so I crafted a pickaxe, got efficiency on it but nothing else, so I crafted another one and refreshed the table a bunch of times until I got silk touch for it. I collected some more raw chicken and bones for baby Spike, and I also went to help poor Catherine that was taking damage from the skeletons, so I gave her some rotten meat to heal her, as well as Kate and William. By day 58, Spike had now become a teenager. I crafted some more stone bricks and continued building. So now, let's have a little French lesson. Castle in French is château. You may have heard about a very famous chateau in France, le Château de Versailles. It was the home of many kings, but since the French Revolution in 1789, no king has lived in it, and it became the Museum of the History of France in 1837. Dragon in French is written the exact same way as in English, but you pronounce it dragon. Basically in French, the letters O and N together are pronounced on, which is a sound that doesn't exist in the English language, so well done if you managed to pronounce it correctly. At that point, I wanted to take Hector up with me so that I could fly up and down when getting extra materials, but as you can see, it did not go as planned because Kate and William started attacking him, so I hit them a few times so that they would stop. Poor little Hector, he never gets a break. I wanted to get a mending book for my helmet, so I crafted a lectern and a fletching table, and then I set off with him to the village. I sat Hector down and stole this villager's bed for the night. On day 59, I placed down a fletching table and started trading sticks for emeralds with this very smart villager. I also placed down a lectern and I built a wall around the librarian so that I could refresh his trades without him running off. I got fed up of breaking the lecterns, so I traded with the Fletcher for a bit and I collected some more wood. When I finally got mending from the librarian, I realized I'd forgotten a book, so that's not very handy. And the next morning I hunted some cows and I also found a bit of sugar cane with the help of Hector. Back at the village, I was able to buy a mending book and we finally returned home. I enchanted my pickaxe with Silk Touch and I put mending on my helmet to be able to repair it. I then merged my two pickaxes to get an OP one with efficiency 5. For the moment, I continued smelting the cobblestone I already had, but as soon as I run out, I will go mining with Silk Touch. After working on the castle a bit more, I did some wither skeleton hunting. On day 61, I fed all the animals and I gave a bit of dragon meal to Spike. Another very famous castle, or chateau, is the infamous Bran Castle in Romania. It often finds itself surrounded by lore and mystery because of its connection to Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula. During the 15th century, Vlad the Impaler ruled over the area and earned a reputation for his brutal torture methods. It is believed the castle's mysterious setting and Vlad's bloodlust inspired Stoker's notorious tale. That night, I headed down to strip mine loads of stone, and then I converted everything into bricks. On day 62, I took silver on my head so that I could avoid taking fall damage every time I jumped off the top of the wall. I realized this would be fairly tricky as silver needed a large enough place to land, but finally I managed to sit her down and I continued my work. As planned, I was able to glide down with her, which was fairly handy, and now that the tower was getting larger, it was easier for her to land. The Neuschwanstein Castle in Germany is one of the most visited castles in the world. It is perched on top of a hill, and its white towers and pointy blue rooftops make it look straight out of a fairy tale. Walt Disney thought it was so beautiful that he modeled his Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty castles in Disneyland after it. So yeah, our castle won't be nearly as nice as this one, but I'll do my best. Silver was a great help with the building, and we had half of the walls and towers up. I went strip mining for extra stone and finished off the remaining towers on day 64. I also added some blocks on the wall to add this castle style detail, and yeah, it was starting to look a bit nicer. On day 65, I continued building the entire day because making a castle is very time consuming due to the size. During the night, I hunted some more skeletons for Spike. I decided to bring her out of the castle walls to let her fly around a bit, and when I fed her, she reached stage 3, so I was able to climb on her back and fly around with her. So we had a quick look at the castle from above, and yeah, when I'm on a dragon's back, for some reason the shader looks a bit corrupted, but if I lower the perspective, it's much better. I decided to craft some armor for Spike, and she looked pretty awesome with it on, and the castle was a great idea because it fits perfectly with the dragons. That night, I set off with Spike and Catherine to go back to the fire dragon lair for collecting loads of ores for making more dragon armor. On day 67, we flew back home, but I had a small issue. Basically, Spike was flying around the castle instead of coming down, meaning she was breaking pieces of the towers. So when she came towards me, I summoned her down with the flute, and I guess we will have to rebuild all the broken parts. I crafted her a nice gold body armor piece and it fit beautifully with her white scales. I also fed Mrs. Catherine, and then we had lots of fun fixing up the broken ramparts and tower tops. The next morning I realized I hadn't completely finished the back wall, so I set to work. I made little openings at the bottom of each tower and lit up the inside to prevent mobs from spawning. Hector and I first flew to the dark oak forest to collect some logs, and then we headed back to the village to trade sticks for emeralds. I was able to buy off 2 more mending books from the librarian, and then we made our way back to the castle to start creating pillars meant to carry the 2nd floor. Next, it was time to fill in the entire upper floor with brick slabs, and yeah, it took quite some time. On the morning of day 69, I finished off the floor, and after feeding little Spike again, who clearly wasn't little anymore, I headed back up and started working on the top part of the castle, which would be a sort of house and kind of the centerpiece. So it'll be composed of dark oak pillars with some slabs and charred blocks for the roof. Half of the wall will be out of stone bricks, and the other half will have stripped oak logs. On day 70, I continued building the house with dark oak logs and some bricks because they were the materials I had, and then afterwards I would go get what I was missing. A creeper had exploded in the hut, so sadly I think we lost Max, but thankfully Emma was okay. So here is what we have for the moment, and Catherine and I are going back to the lair to get some charred blocks because I thought a nice black roof would look really cool. Once I had enough, we flew back home and I placed down loads of dark blocks to fill up the roof. On day 72, we went to collect another block I would need, oak logs. We headed back to the forest where I had found the 2 poor bees, and I chopped down a bunch of trees. That afternoon we arrived back home and I filled up the walls with logs, and then I stripped them all to give a lighter color. I don't want to bore you too much with all this building, so let's have a few facts on the Middle Ages, as this castle has kind of a medieval look to it. The Middle Ages are a period of European history that reaches from about 500 to 1500 AD. Now, believe it or not, in the Middle Ages, an animal committing an offense, crime, or damage could be accused and judged in a trial just as a human would. Therefore, pigs, cows, rats, and even insects have been tried and sometimes sentenced for committing offenses. Yeah, honestly, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. On day 74, I worked a bit on the lower part of the castle walls by adding details around the windows using dark oak beams, stairs, fences, and brick walls. I also broke down the starter hut a bit and collected some sand for making glass. I added some lanterns above the windows and removed the enchanting area. The next day, I removed the dirt at the entrance of the home to replace it entirely with dark oak planks, which looked way nicer and neat. Spike and I went to chop down some dark oak trees, and she was able to test out her really cool frozen breath on the forest and passing mobs. That night, I filled in all the windows with glass to prevent any mobs from coming in. I used this little room for my storage area, so I placed down a bunch of chests and I started bringing all my stuff over. Now, another fun fact on medieval times is that some people used to wear shoes with extra long tips. That looked absolutely ridiculous. They were generally worn by the wealthiest portion of society and were the status symbol for the rich. They would basically prevent the wearer from doing any type of manual labor, suggesting that the owner was living a life of leisure. In England, Edward III introduced a law which made archery practice mandatory to ensure the king always had a steady supply of archers available. Yeah, knowing my terrible bow shooting skills in Minecraft, I highly doubt Edward III would have asked me to defend England. On day 77, I decided I would build a staircase connecting the first and second floor, because before that I was going up with a ladder on the side and it wasn't very practical. I also replaced part of the floor with glass to let some more light in underneath. I created a path between the deer and the chicken enclosure, and we're actually going to move our farming area inside, and I'm going to hoe down 2 large crop plots on each side of the path. In the tower opposite to my storage, I decided I would put my bedroom. The next day, Spike and I decided to go collect some materials for finishing the castle, so first we went to get some dark oak logs, and then we flew back to the oak forest to get some more wood here as well. That night, we came back home and I continued building the upper walls out of stripped oak logs. As I was done with the walls, I moved on to the roof and I filled it up with charred stone blocks. So yeah, here is the finished result of the house on top, but I'm still missing a few blocks for the other side, so let's quickly go back and get some. I managed to finish off the roof during the night, and then on day 80, I added a few details to my bedroom by placing down campfires around the bed, as well as some barrels with a lantern and trapdoors all around. I added 2 pots with a dark oak sapling by the entrance, as well as a put-out campfire on the side. Back in the bedroom, I added 2 small tables with a bunch of pots with flowers in them to decorate, so yeah, it looks much cuter now. I was harvesting some wheat when I came by Emma, who was sleeping on the side, so I got her up and brought her into the bedroom so that she could sleep on the bed, and she looked absolutely adorable and really comfy, so I was delighted. To add a bit more detail to the path, I incorporated some dark oak planks and cobblestone. And then on day 81, I added some windows with shutters and plant pots to the house part at the top. That night, I brought Mr. Hector and Mrs. Silver inside, and then I added a second floor using some stone brick slabs. The next morning, I added some more dark oak pillars and columns because I thought they really added a lot to this bottom area, making it way more structured, and to have a slight curve in the corners, I placed some upside down stairs and trapdoors. Okay, we are officially done with the castle, so now I want to tame the 3rd dragon type, the lightning dragon. Alongside me on my quest, I would have my 2 partners in crime, Catherine and Spike. Having 2 enormous dragons flying at the same time made the mod fairly laggy, so I made the wise decision of carrying Spike in a dragon horn while we were exploring the world and loading new chunks. I passed by many biomes like mountains and forests, when finally we found a savanna, so I kept an eye out for any dragon nests. We actually didn't find any, but instead there was this huge dragon skeleton, so I went to collect the bones. I let Spike out of her horn so that she could stretch her wings a bit, because I think it's quite a tight squeeze in there. Like for the other 2 dragons, I couldn't use nests as landmarks because there weren't any for some reason, so this time we had to start digging in a random spot. So try 1 was a fail, we just reached bedrock, so I picked up Catherine in a horn and Spike flew me over to a new spot. No luck here either, so on day 84, I dug down in yet another area, and finally I saw some charred stone blocks. We had indeed found a lightning dragon lair. I was fairly scared for this one because apparently lightning dragons are way more dangerous than ice and fire ones. I stepped near the edge, shot a quick arrow, and immediately ran off. To get a better shooting position, I dug down another staircase and attacked the lightning dragon from there. Finally, the dragon was dead, and honestly, it wasn't the scariest fight we've had, but I'm totally fine with that. Less stress for Tootsie. I looted this breakdancing dragon and got a stunning amethyst egg. On day 86, I went back up to my 2 girls, picked up Catherine, and flew home with Spike. So to attempt not losing the baby dragon when it hatches for the 3rd time in this video, we will place the egg at the top of the castle here, and I'm just gonna hope the dragon won't immediately jump off the wall. To give a cool dragon style look to our base, let's add some huge dragon skulls here. And at the back, we can place this ice dragon skull, which has an extra horn in the middle. I then hopped onto Hector's back to have a little look at the castle, and then we flew over to the village. I sat Hector down, and then I forced the Fletcher out of bed for trading sticks with me, and I got an extra mending book from the librarian. I put mending on my pickaxe and my axe because I still had one mending book left from the last time. I went back to see the egg, but it hadn't hatched yet because it needed to rain for the process to start. Spike and I went to get some more spruce saplings because I wanted to plant a few more trees around the castle as it felt a bit empty at the moment, so I bone mealed a bunch and I also terraformed this part a bit to make it look nicer. As I was waiting for rain, I didn't sleep that night and went mob hunting instead. On day 88, I bone mealed some more trees, and then I decided to place my dragons on each side of the castle. Yeah, I know, this is completely useless, but it looks cool, so don't judge. To make the entrance of the castle more elegant, I added this path with some red rose bushes on each side. Next, I went indoors to replace the torches with some hanging lanterns, and that's when I saw it was raining, so I quickly went to check on the egg, and indeed, it was starting to turn in circles, meaning the process of hatching had started. I went to collect some more bones and made some dragon meal for the baby. While I was waiting for the egg to hatch, I started decorating the inside of the house, making little dark oak couches with dragon scale blocks on the sides. On day 89, I continued making some furniture, and then I noticed it had stopped raining, so I quickly went to check on the egg, and guess what? Once again, it had disappeared. Yeah, I guess I can't make this mistake twice without making it a third time as well. But yeah, no worries, the baby had just walked down the stairs, so it was all good. So yeah, meet our adorable new buddy, Bella. She is really so beautiful with her bright purple scales, so I really can't wait for her to grow up. So we have 3 females, meaning we can't breed them, but that's no big deal because we're already a huge family. I fed Bella some tasty dragon meal and she grew a bit more. And yeah, look at the 3 best dragons in this world. Oh my god, sorry, I forgot Hector. So look at the 4 best dragons in this world. I have to say, as all their colors are really different, it really gives a nice contrast. We're actually going to bring out Hector and Silver on the terrace at the front because I think it's nicer for them to have a bit of fresh air. That night, I crafted some dark oak doors, signs and stairs, and started building a large dining table with some nice chairs all around, mixing a slab, a door, and some signs. I also had a look at how Bella defended herself against this zombie, and I noticed she stays awake at night and sleeps during the day, which is the opposite for Spike and Catherine. As I was also not sleeping nights, I went to hunt mobs in the fortress, and then on day 90 I made some dragon meal for Bella. So she grew a bit more, but I could still fit her on my shoulder, and as you can see, she goes back to sleep as it's daytime. I wanted to get her some nice copper armor, so Catherine and I headed back to the lightning dragon lair and collected some extra bones on the way. So I headed down to get ores and arrived at the bottom slightly quicker than I had planned. I then spent some time mining the little piles of copper and looting chests as well. I noticed there was actually a second dragon lair right next to this one, so I had to be very careful or else things would turn for the worst. In the evening of day 91, I went back up to the surface to find Catherine, and then we flew home during the night so that I was able to hunt a few more skeletons. When I came back inside, I saw that Catherine's tail was sticking out of the corner, which made it look pretty strange. The next morning, I fed Spike, and then I put some copper armor on Bella so that she would be a bit more protected, and I also gave her some dragon meal, which gave her this beautiful smile full of teeth. So I changed up each dragon's armor and took the gold off Spike to put it on Bella, but I thought it would be nicer if she had a full copper armor and Catherine could have the gold body piece instead, so we headed back to the closest dragon lair which was the ice one, so that we could collect some extra ores. On my way down, I actually found several veins of copper, so I mined them all and we flew home to smelt them. So I took the gold piece off Bella and put it on Catherine, but it actually still looked a bit weird in contrast with the iron, so I simply went for the full iron armor look. I also crafted the copper body piece and put it on Bella so that she had a full fit. I wanted her to get to stage 3 at least because I was planning on going on a trip with all 3 dragons to take my revenge on the 2 fire dragons that had killed me and almost killed poor Hector. To prepare, I brewed some fire resistance potions, and I also did a lot of mob hunting because I needed to collect as many bones as possible. I got into a bit of trouble with the pigmen this time, but yeah, I dealt with it just fine. Finally, Bella was old enough for me to ride her, so off we went to test out her lightning abilities. So sadly it seems that with this shader you can't really see her lightning attack, which is a shame, but yeah, basically she sends out these deadly lightning bolts, and from time to time she also throws out these electricity filled exploding blocks, which is pretty cool. So yeah, on day 96 it was revenge time. I had Spike and Bella in their respective horns, and I flew over to the plains biome with Catherine. On our way we actually had fun burning these horrible sea serpents, but then we spotted the dragons, so it was time to attack. With the help of Catherine, we finished off our foes, and I looted the body of this dragon with an empty bottle to get some dragon blood. Yeah, I've got to say, revenge is sweet. I let Spike and Bella out of their horns because I didn't have time to do so beforehand. I decided to let them escort me, which made things very chaotic all of a sudden. And then I kind of misclicked on Catherine and put her in wandering, but she was such an enormous dragon that I couldn't catch up with her, and I felt so stupid running after her like that. And I was incapable of catching up, so I ran back to get Bella, and we flew over to try and get Catherine to stop wandering. Yeah, that was such an unnecessarily stressful moment, but to be fair, it was quite funny, although in the moment I was panicking a bit. All was well, and I put Bella and Catherine in their horns and flew home on Spike. That night I went to snuggle up in bed with my little Emma, and it reminded me of a lovely memory with my dog Lucky, who used to snuggle up with me every night. On day 97, I admired my beautiful dragons, and I also added this skull above the door as a reminder not to mess with Tootsie and Hector. I then remembered I had this bottle of fire dragon blood, so I crafted an extra sword to not lose the enchantments on the current one, and crafted a flamed dragon bone sword, which is a legendary weapon. I had a quick chicken test with the sword, and it was still a few days before reaching day 100, so I decided I would challenge myself in getting the ice and lightning swords as well. So I packed up the dragons, yes, it feels a bit weird saying that, and set out to find an ice dragon. The next day we spotted this dragon near its nest, so we attacked it with Catherine's fire breath, and yeah, the dragon was no match, so I collected some sand to make bottles because, of course, I had forgotten to take some, and I took a few ice dragon blood samples. Next we had to find a lightning dragon, so we flew back to the savannah, but as there weren't any low-level dragons around, I had to resolve to fighting a powerful stage 4 or 5 dragon below ground. I thought it would be smart having Catherine alongside me for the battle because she could just burn all the mobs. The dragon wasn't waking up with the flames, so I had to jump off Catherine, and at the same time the dragon got up and started attacking me, so I made a run for it. I shot at the dragon a few more times, but I was losing a lot of health, so I quickly got back onto Catherine, and she spit out her flames and finished off the beast. I then went to collect the lightning dragon blood, made it back up to the surface, and headed home with Bella. We had finally reached day 100, so Tootsie had her priorities. I placed the 3 dragons in front of the castle so that it looked as cool as possible. Yes, once again very useful. And then I went to craft the ice and lightning dragon bone swords, but when I went to test them out on the chickens, I realized this lightning one was very powerful. The ice sword made this little icicle, so it was slightly less impressive, and then I placed the 2 extra swords up with the flamed one. And that is it, guys. 100 days with dragons, and oh my, this was such a fun adventure, though fairly stressful at times. I have to say, fighting these overpowered dragons early game really gets my blood pumping, but yeah, getting these awesome companions as a result is totally worth it. Thank you so much for watching the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like to see more content like this, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video. Love you!